What's up everyone, my name is Garrett Blackwood, welcome back to the vlog. As you can see, we're on the move today. I'm checking into Caesar's Palace for a couple of days. Sad to have just left our EDC house, but as you can see, I am delighted to be staying here. Gotta keep up my good habits going over the summer, so it's down to the gym for a bit of heavy lifting. Really nice gym here at Caesar's. After the gym, it's a quick shower and out the door, stopping off at Cafe Americano for a spot of brunch. I didn't think this burrito would be as big as it was. Then we're out the door and into the Las Vegas streets. Alright, it's finally time for some cards. I have been so busy all day, and now it's finally time to play some cards. Yeah, let's head into the Bellagio to see what's running, see if we can get to a 5-10 or a 10-20 and take it from there. It's been a fun day so far, but it's time to get to work. Alright, into the Bellagio we go. Great timing because there's a 10-20 starting just as I arrive. I've got 10k in cash with me, plus more on deposit if I need it. Really excited for the game today as I walk up the elevated part of the Bellagio poker room. We're starting the game 5-handed, and I'm in here for $3,500. A couple of the pros are in for 5 figures, and one non-pro is bought in for $50,000. One day I'll be up here covering all the players at the table, but until then, $3,500 is plenty. Tons and tons of small pots to start us off here, and after about 40 minutes of very little happening, I pick up Ace-8 of hearts in the small blind. The $40 straddle is on here. I raise it on up to $120. The reg in the big blind is going to make it $400 to go, and then the non-pro in the straddle is going to cold call. I am $3,600 deep with both these players. It's a 10 big blind 3-bet, and I'm dominated sometimes by the big blind, and I think very often by the straddle, so I make a very disciplined laydown here. The flop is ace high. It goes check. I'm wondering why I'm such a nit until the king hits the turn, and the big blind's pocket kings are going to take this one down. I'm of course just kidding about the good fold or bad fold depending on the results of the hand. Can't of course be results oriented. I think this is a good fold pre-flop though. Like I say, I think I'm dominated by both players, and we're kind of just playing for hearts out of position here. Anyway, moving on, I'm under the gun with ace queen of clubs for this next hand. I raise it on up to $60. The button is a non-pro who's going to put in the re-raise. He makes it $260 to go, and I make the call. We go heads up to the flop. It is jack 5 deuce rainbow. I've got backdoor straight draws and backdoor flush draws. I could even have the best hand, so when my opponent bets out for $300, even versus a half pot c-bet, I think we have to call here. The turn is the 4 of spades. Really annoying because I pick up a lot of equity or make a pair on so many turn cards. Even though I've just turned the gut shot, I'm not able to continue. My opponent bets $660. Time to just fold here. Not much else I can do. Down about $800 or so for the day so far today. I take a quick bathroom break, and when I come back, I see the game is now 6-handed, and a couple of the non-straddlers are now straddling. So I assume we're playing 10, 20, 40 here and top up my stack to 4.5k. It turns out the game is not mandatory straddle, and the non-straddlers go back to non-straddling very quickly, and all of a sudden I'm $1,000 deeper than I had intended to be. But do you know what? Who cares? It just means we win 1k more when we inevitably double up. Next up, I am on the button with 8-5 of clubs. The straddle is on here to $40. I raise it on up to $120. I go 2.5x from all other positions and then 3x on the button in a 6-handed game. The big blind is going to make the call. The straddle is going to make the call. Both are the only non-pros at the table. The big blind actually won a 20k pot versus the straddle in his very first hand just a few minutes ago. We go 3 ways to the flop. It is 9-4 deuce rainbow. I do have some backdoor draws, but when the boys check to me, we can't just bet relentlessly here. Remember, we're 3 ways and it's not a great board for my range. I don't think my hand wants to do much betting, so I just check it on back. The deuce of spades hits the turn. Both players check again, and again we can't just delay c-bet relentlessly here versus 2 players. I'd rather have an overcard to the board at least, so that I've got 3 outs versus top pair, for example. Again, I just check it on back. The river is an offsuit 3. Both these players check again quite quickly. The straddle is actually holding up his cards ready to fold, so I think it's time to take a stab here. I take a stab for $240, hoping that nobody calls me like king high or something. Thankfully, both players are just going to fold. Happy to be able to drag this one in. I don't think we can bet the flop. I don't think we should bet the turn, but I definitely think we want to be stabbing the river here when both players look really uninterested. A real lack of big hands for me so far today, but that changes 10 minutes after the 8-5 of clubs hand when I look down at pocket kings. I am under the gun here in a 6-handed game, and the straddle is on, so I raise it on up to $100. The big blind is Joe. He's a solid UK pro, and I am delighted to see him reach for chips here. He puts in the re-raise to $460. It folds all the way back around to me, and I put on my best I have ace-5 suited face before putting in a very healthy 4-bet to $1,200. Now, in hindsight, this is a little too big. I only start the hand with about $3,700 in my stack, so I think I prefer like $1,050 or so. Still though, no harm done here as he makes the call. We go heads up to the flop with $2,500 in the middle, and it comes down Jack 7-3 rainbow. Relatively safe looking flop for my pocket kings here. I think we've got a clear c-bet here, probably with our entire range. I bet out for $600. I don't expect my opponent to play any raises here. In theory, he's probably supposed to, but even the best human players struggle to raise out of position in 4-bet pots at the right frequency. My opponent thinks it over for a little while and then makes the call. The turn is the 5 of spades. My opponent, of course, checks again, and now it gets a little tricky. The stack to pot ratio here on the turn is 0.5, meaning I've got half a pot size bet left behind. I don't think I have any other size here than all in when the SPR is so low. I also don't think my opponent has any top pairs pre-flop. I've made it $1,200 with $2,500 behind. He's for sure folding hands like Jack 10, Queen Jack, and King Jack. And I think Ace Jack is just going to fold it as well. I'm giving him a range of 10s, Jacks, Queens, Aces, Ace King, and some Ace Queen suited that floats the flop. I honestly think if we shove here, he obviously folds out his Ace Highs, he starts hero folding Queens and 10s sometimes, and we just get called always by Jacks and Aces. So I decided to check back the turn here, keep my range nice and wide, and it also gives me more of a chance of being paid off on the river. When the turn goes check, check, and I shove, I've probably got more bluffs. To the river, it is a fairly innocent looking 9. Now things get kind of funky. After a minute or so, Joe is going to lead out on the river here for $800. This is a very nice blocker bet by him. I've got about $1,900 total at this point. So do we shove for the rest? Do we just knit it up and call? Again, I think his range here is 10s, Jacks, Queens, and Aces, and some bluffs. Maybe he shoves pocket aces. Maybe he doesn't bluff for this size. I'm really not sure the exact intricacies of his range. I decide to be a bit of a nit myself here and just call. He actually turns over one of the few hands that I could have stacked if I'd played for it all at any point in the hand. He's got pocket queens. Now, on the face of it, I've got kings versus queens on a jack high board in a 4-bet pot. It looks like I should have stacked him here, but given the weird stack to pot ratio on the turn and the really narrow river range, I honestly don't mind my line. I've discussed this hand in depth with a lot of players, some of which are much better than I am, and the general consensus is that if we want to play it differently, we should just shove the turn. And if he's got jacks or aces, then que sera. It's just a bit cooler. I personally like my line here. I genuinely think good regs consider folding queens on the turn. My range is just so strong when I shove the turn here. But yeah, really curious to see what the comments say about this one. The big hands are like London buses here. You wait for ages for one, and then two come along all at once. Looking down at ace queen offsuit here, the straddle is on, so I raise it on up to $100 in the hijack. The button is a non-pro. He pops it to $300. Folds back around to me, and in theory we want to do a lot of 4-betting here, but versus a non-pro, I think the best option is to just call. We go heads up to the flop. It is Queen 7-5 rainbow, top pair, top kicker for me. Great start here. My opponent c-bets for $300. Raising is for sure an option here, and I definitely don't mind it. Maybe if we're a bit shallower, I'm happier to raise so that we can just get the money in a little bit easier on the turn of the river. But in this instance, I decide to just call. The turn is the 10 of spades, draws galore now, and my opponent continues to barrel. He bets again for $1,000. There's a lot of table talk going on here. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But at this point in the hand, I've got $5,700 in my stack. Definitely too deep to jam. Maybe raising to 2.8k is a thing here. But if he's bluffing, then I say just let him bluff. I decide to just call. To the river, keep it clean, dealer. It's a king. Really not ideal at all. Obviously, some king X beats me, and some straight draws have just gotten there as well. Now, this guy, as I mentioned, has been talking to me throughout the entire hand, asking how much he needs to bet on the turn to make me fold, and so on. He now asks me on the river if I will fold versus a jam. I just smile at him and say, let's find out. After about 20 seconds more of talking to me, he moves all in. He's got me way covered here, so it's $4,500 and change for me to call. This is really gross. My immediate instinct is to just go ahead and fold. I don't snap fold though. I always like to take 10 or 15 seconds to think about what my range looks like and what my opponent's range looks like, and you know, any bluffs that they can have in their range. Even when I'm sure that I'm going to fold, I always like to just think about it for a few seconds, just to kind of keep the poker brain working working when I'm playing live poker. After about 10 to 15 seconds though, he starts talking to me, asking me all sorts of questions. Can I be aces? Can I be ace king? Can I be ace queen? Just jabbering away to me about all sorts. I actually pick up my 1k chips at this point to play with him, and he looks at that and starts talking to me even more. Now I know the general consensus is that when non-pros talk a lot, they're likely strong, and I do agree with that. But if you guys could see the way that he was acting and talking away to me, I just feel like he is so unbelievably weak. The more he talks, the more I really want to make this hero call here. In the end, I decide to go with my read. I acknowledge there are not many good reasons to call here, like his range and the price and the bad river and all that stuff, but I think he's weak. I'm going to trust my read here. I make the call. He starts to turn over his hand and time stands still. There's a pot worth about $13,000 to be won here. I'll make you guys a deal. If I win here, the 55% or so of you who are watching this who are not yet subbed to the channel, do me a favor, pause the video and click the sub button. Deal? Deal. He tables his hand. He's got ace jack of clubs for runner nuts. This is absolutely gut-wrenching when he turns it over. I'm really quite sad here because I went with my read, and in the end, the guy has completely owned me by talking me into calling. I wasn't going to call. I was getting ready to fold. He started talking to me, and he has completely done me. As for the 55% of the unsub viewers, what can I say? I'm balanced as fuck with my sub requests. At least I've got that going for me. This big pot is going to send me down $5,100 for the day. Pretty gruesome, as I was in profit after that pocket king's hand. I really wish I'd just shoved the kings on the turn. Not as much as I'd wish I'd folded the ace queen on the river, mind you. But hey ho. I pull my chips out my bag and the grind goes on. Next up, I'm on the button with ace jack offsuit. The $80 straddle is on here, so I raise it on up to $200 off of about $4,000. The middle blind is the guy from the last hand. He makes the call, and the big blind calls as well. Both the callers are non-pros, and then my buddy Joe in the $80 straddle. He gets that look on his face. I know what's coming. He puts in a healthy squeeze to $1,200. Joe is pretty active and pretty aggressive pre-flop. This is a sweet spot to squeeze for him versus a button raise and $400 worth of dead money. I am so tempted to jam here, but if I do and he calls with a better hand and I lose, I'm just going to feel like I've just punted my guts out. Even though it's such a nice steal spot for him and that makes it a great re-steal spot for me, I decide ace jack suited and ace queen offsuit are the bottom of my shoving range here, and ace jack offsuit is just going to be a disciplined fold. I fold my hand, the other two guys fold as well. I asked Joe a couple of days later what he had. He tells me he had pocket queens. Thank God I didn't shove there. I would have felt like such a punter if we got it in there and lost. Down over 5k for the day here, but hoping to get some of that back when I look down at ace king offsuit in the straddle. The button is a non-pro. He raises it on up to $120. The big blind is an Italian pro who puts in the re-raise to $520. And I bust out the cold 4-bet here to $1,260, ready of course to go with it if I need to. But both players just make the fold. To be honest, I'm really happy with this. It's nice to just win a few $100 after the last couple of hands. And we just keep going. 15 minutes or so later, I'm going to pick up ace king offsuit again, this time in middle position. I raise it on up to $100 because the straddle is still on. The button is going to make the call, and the Italian pro in the straddle makes it $760 to go. This is a very, very big squeeze, but then again, he's deep here with the button, so it does make sense to go kind of bigger. I've got 5k or so in my stack here. I think making it $1,650 is a bit silly here, so I decide to stick it in for all the marbles for around 5k total. The button snap folds his hand, and then the straddle snap folds as well. Maybe I should just stick to sticking it in pre-flop and grind my way out the hole like that. A couple of small but necessary pots coming my way. Really nice to win without showdown. Now on to some straddle politics here. So the game is 10, 20, 40 now. There is one guy in the game who's not straddling to 40. That's fine. I'm not here to talk about him. He can do what he likes. I genuinely don't mind that. It's up to him. But it's 10, 20, 40 for the rest of us. And then there are three guys who are always doing the 80 as well. So we're sometimes playing 10, 20. Sometimes it's 10, 20, 40, and sometimes it's 10, 20, 40, 80. The non-pro in the game asked me to do the $80 straddle, and I tell him I'll do the 40, but I'm not yet ready to do the 80. He looks a little annoyed at me, so an orbit later, I decide, you know what? I want to keep everyone happy. I stick on the $80 straddle. After I stick it on, I look down at Jack 9 offsuit. The non-pro is on the button. He raises it on up to $200. It folds round to me, and even though we're a little shallow here, we're playing like 50 big blind poker, I think we've got a very clear call. We go heads up to the flop. It is Jack 10-5 with 2 diamonds. I check to my opponent and the c-bet comes in for $400. Pretty big c-bet here. I've got top pair, backdoor straight draw, I of course make the call. The turn is a board pairing 5. I was thinking about leading out here, but I don't think it does much good in this scenario. I decide to just check to my opponent again, and of course he bets again, this time for 1 yellow chip. That's $1,000. It's starting to get quite gross here. I don't think he ever has trips given his big flop bets, but obviously he's got over pairs and better top pairs and stuff like that. But also there are a ton of draws on this board, so I can't fold just yet. I make the call. The river is the brick of all bricks of all bricks. Nothing changes. I check again, and he fires again, this time for $2,700. This is a really, really nasty spot. Really important to note though, he's lost a big pot in the previous hand. Top pair versus top pair. He's actually called a raise in the small blind with 10-7 of diamonds and lost to ace-10 for like a 4 or 5k pot. He does look a little steamed up after losing that hand, so that sort of plays into the equation a little bit here as well. As for the hand itself, I unblock diamonds. He's got hands like ace-queen, ace-king, and king-queen that can triple off. My 9 obviously blocks some like king-9 and queen-9 and 9-8 type hands, so the blockers kind of work both ways in this spot. Maybe this is a punt to call, maybe it's completely fine, maybe it's indifferent, but given he was a bit tilted when he mucked the last hand, I decide to go ahead and make the call, just praying that he's steaming from the last hand. He turns over his hand, he's got ace-jack. God damn it. My river hero call's really not working for me today at all. It's kind of ironic because you guys have seen me make many big hero folds in this vlog in the past. I folded ace-king on a king-king X board in London in a 3-bet pot, the queen-5 in the Venetian in the bomb pot last week versus 8-5 on jack 5-5-8. Unfortunately today it looks like I've lost my ability to fold, and in the biggest game of the summer that I've played so far, it's costing me dearly. I actually get up from the table after this hand and take a break, but after 15 minutes of wandering around the Bellagio, I still feel really quite disappointed, quite tilted, quite frustrated. So after a while I come back to the table, pick up my chips and head to the cashier. I don't even film it, I'm that tilted. Booking a loss of $8,975 for the day, 5 small wins in a row, then an almighty 10, 20, 40, 80 kick in the nuts. Guys and girls, I recorded this very long outro. It's me going over the hands and trying to justify my punts, but the truth is I played really poorly. It's been a couple of days since I played this session. I've had time to reflect on it, and instead of ending this vlog with a really long outro, let's just finish it here. I played poorly. It happens from time to time. I'm not going to play as badly as that when I play again. So thanks very much for watching. If you could click the sub button, I'd be very grateful. Until next time, thanks for watching. Take it easy.